This week on AtoZrunning, we interview Zach Panning, professional runner from Hansons Brooks Distance Project, and we discuss his recent success at the World Championships Marathon, where he placed 13th, and he talks us through his race strategies.
In running news, New York City Marathon was both incredibly fast and incredibly slow, but exciting all around. Spain crushed the 50K championships, and the USA Track and Field Road Circuit wrapped up with the 5,000. And the men's race was almost cut short by a bus. All this and more on AtoZrunning.
Welcome back to the AtoZrunning podcast, where we help runners thrive with information, inspiration, coaching, and training services. I'm Andy.
And I'm Zach. And just a reminder that you can learn more about our services and support for runners at AtoZrunning.com. And for those of you who are trying to visit our website when it was struggling a bit recently, it's back up and running and working just fine at the moment. So take full advantage of that. And be sure to follow us on Instagram, YouTube, Spotify, or wherever other places are that you seem to find our content.
Yeah.
I don't know where they are, but there's places. So we wrapped up last week our series on biosensors, which apparently many of you found as interesting as I do. And if you didn't, you weren't telling me, but certainly I don't mind, critical feedback and say, Zach, stop talking about boring data stuff because, if you don't want to talk about it, tell us what you do want to talk about because that's what we like. But that's something many of you were sharing some of your thoughts with me in various capacities about the data stuff and these biosensors. And I had a very interesting conversation with one of you in particular about how hard it is to use these kinds of data without obsessing or feeling like they're just dominating us. And it was an important conversation, but also it's an important broad reflection for all of us, which is why I wanted to just note it here at this point. The very real, it's not just a temptation or tendency, but it's just a common norm in running where we gravitate toward those data and then become obsessed with them. And how do we not do that? Is that so it's tricky, it's challenging. And I think it's just really important to be reflective about that in terms of what is the thing I'm trying to do here and how do I best accomplish that? And if I can use that kind of information to help me, that's good. Like the NICS sensor, for example, is one that can be very helpful, giving me data about what I need to be doing differently. And then how do I become the kind of runner who can do that without pure reliance on these types of things. So my rule of thumb always is, as mentioned in a conversation, again with a different runner, but a conversation about watches and Strava. And my comment was, when in doubt, just get rid of the watch.
Yeah, or
just
even
get rid
do
of
a
the
trial
Strava. Just stop
of
it,
not doing something just to have it go back to the pure joy of running.
Yeah.
Because consistency, as we've mentioned, if you can stay consistent with your training, and you can last through the sport with many years of good training, that's where you're going to see your greatest results. So if you're hung up on little details day to day and it's stressing you out and it's keeping you from being consistent, it's not serving you.
Yeah. Be done with that stuff. Yep. Well, we'll talk more about those things in the near future because that, in fact, will occupy one of the topics we may be addressing sometime soon. So certainly stay tuned on that. But more immediately, let's get started with your questions. Don't forget, every week we answer your great questions. They're always great questions. Anyone can ask anything. Anything is fair game, and it helps to at least be vaguely related to running, but that's up to you. So you can ask these questions very easily now by simply sending an email to questions@atozrunning.com. ATOZrunning.com.
We'll only answer the running related questions though, not the vaguely possibly not running related questions
we might
on air anyway.
We might.
We just okay.
Because you ask very interesting questions, and
Yeah,
that's the
true.
whole point. That's the reason we're doing this, is because we like to talk with you about the stuff on your minds?
Including this question from Lorenda. I've been doing my pre-run warm-ups at home, then getting in my car and driving approximately 5 minutes to my run location. Does that drive make my warm-up obsolete or less effective?
No.
Is that the end of your question?
Well, it's a yes/no question. No, I'm kidding. So we shared some additional thoughts with Lorenda directly as well at the time of the asking, but a worthwhile reflection, because most of us don't like to just run from home all the time, if ever. It depends on where you live, certainly. But that being the case, also, it's not always how to say this, because the reasons abound. You have reasons for why you may not want to be doing things like warm-up drills wherever you're going to run.
Like a snow-covered ground.
All sorts of reasons.
Some things you do on the ground.
Who knows? Yeah. Like you want to be inside on the carpet when you're doing, like if you're laying on the ground, right? Yes. So all sorts of reasons. It's just more convenient in most instances to do exercises, pre-run drills, things of that nature before at home, in the comfort of your home where you have your equipment, whatever it is. So yes, we do that a lot. And the simple truth is that there is an amount of time where it's not really as helpful in terms of like warming you up for your run. I would say it's just always good. If you're going to do the pre-run stuff and the question is between doing it and not doing it, then do it, regardless of whether there's a gap between the drills and the run. However, in terms of like the activation benefits you get, the neuromuscular firing that you're trying to do in something like precision warm-up drills, there's an amount of time. I don't know exactly what it is. It's not really that exact, but you know,
5 minutes is not very long.
5 minutes, 10 minutes is fine. Think about it like this. This is always an interesting thought, right? So like the World Championships or Olympics in track and field, right? Those athletes do extensive pre-run stuff. You've seen it. You know, they show you like they have practice tracks next to or underneath, depending on where they are. Some of them are like literally indoor tracks that are in the basement, but they have practice tracks and facilities where these athletes are doing all sorts of warm-up stuff before they get to the actual competition spot. But then from the time when they finish their warm-up stuff, then they have to like go into this holding area, and it's usually 10-ish minutes in there. And then they have to like get out onto the track, and it's usually 5 to 10 minutes out there. Like we're talking about 15 to 20 minutes between when they finish their warm-ups and then they can actually start a race. That's the norm at the international competition level. So obviously those things they did are still helping them for the competition, or this whole system is broken. But there's a limit here. I think in general for us, because we're not doing necessarily like an hour of warm-up stuff that they're doing either, but for most of us, 15 or 20 minutes is probably pushing it. If I can keep that under 5 or 10 minutes or so, that's going to be totally fine. And it also just depends on the circumstances. If it's like really warm outside and you're sitting in a car for a little bit and then you get out and you're kind of walking around a little and then you start, you're going to be fine. If it's like frigid cold outside and you sit in a cold car for 10 minutes straight while you're driving from your warm-ups to your run location, that's a different scenario.
Can I give you an example of what I do? So I do like my Wharton mobility stuff because I have to be in the ground and whatnot. I'll do that at home. And then when I get to the run location, I'll do my lunge matrix, my leg swings, and my running drills, because those are all standing. So no matter what the weather is, really, I can do that outside before I run. Mm-hmm. And I found that method works out pretty well for me. That Wharton mobility stuff, that I still feel like that helps loosen me up and get me ready for my run, even though there could be 5 or 10 minutes until I get to my run location. And then the rest of it, of course, is immediately before my run.
Yep. Okay. So all told, circumstances depend a bit, but the reality is if you got to have a little bit of time between, a little bit of time is okay. If it's a lot, do something a little more creative, like what Andy's saying. All right. Thank you, Lorenda, for asking. Always appreciate the questions. Submit yours, share yours anytime, all the time, with questions at AtoZrunning.com. We'll answer 1 or 2 each week, and as time allows, continue to try to get to those interesting thoughts. But for now, let's move on to something helpful.
Today, we're excited to introduce you to Zach Panning, a long distance professional runner from Hansons Brooks Distance Project. He trains out of Michigan, USA. Panning's list of accomplishments are really impressive, but I'm just going to give you a little snippet of his career so far. Panning was a 3-time NCAA national champion, Division II, and had many other podium finishes in his collegiate career at GVSU. Post-collegiately, he found success on the roads, cross country, and the track. In 2019, he was third at the USATF 15K championships. In 2021, he was second at the USATF Club Cross Country Championships, where he led his team, the Brooks Hansons Distance Project, to the overall win. He's earned numerous accolades, including top finishes at the USATF Outdoor Championships, where he placed 9th in the 10,000 and 15th in the 5,000 in 2019. Panning has personal best times that are very impressive. For the marathon, he's run 2:09:28. On the track in the 5,000, 13:36. And for his 10,000 on the track, he's run 27:51. So join us for an exciting conversation about one of Panning's most recent accomplishments, placing 13th at the World Marathon Championships as the top American. Panning talks through his marathon moves and gives us insight into his race day. Hi, Zach. Welcome to the AtoZrunning podcast.
Hey, Andy. Thanks for having me on. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we are just thrilled to have you on the show because we've been following your journey for quite a long time. You were at GVSU, so I feel like you're a fellow Michigander, but your story started before then. And so we're going to get to some of your story today, and also congratulations on your recent World Marathon Championships where you were 13th place. Incredible for performance representing Team USA.
Thank you. Yeah. The world's performance was a lot of fun, but got to definitely shout out Grand Rapids because it's definitely a big part of my life, and I love my time there, and I definitely miss it a lot being over in Detroit area now. So
yeah. Well, you're welcome to come back anytime. We have the 25K championships. And I think I remember you were at my alma mater in Rockford, Michigan at the LPGA 5K a few years ago. Is that right?
Yeah. I was there in 2019. So I was like finishing. It's kind of a weird gap period between the end of my senior track season and the US championships on the track that year. I was running the 10K. So got to kind of change things up a little bit. It was my first chance to make a little bit of money at a race. So that was a lot of fun. I think it was Meyer gift cards. So yeah, I love that race. But yeah, I definitely want to get back for the 25K at some point. I feel like that would be a fun distance to race and just be back in Grand Rapids. So
yeah. Well, we'd love to see you there. Well, you got to see my alma mater, but let's talk about yours, because even though we were able to see you on the scene as multi-time national champion, you were on the podium several times at GVSU for Division II, your journey didn't begin there. So I would love for our audience to hear your beginnings in running, Zach.
Yeah, so it's kind of a cool story, I think. I started out my freshman year of high school. I weighed a little bit more than I do now, and I was a few inches shorter as well. So you can kind of imagine that. But kind of came out for the team because it was a great way to make friends. And that's, at first I hated the running side of things. That summer there were days when I just did not want to go to practice. But luckily, as I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast in the future knows, that just the people that you meet through running are super cool. And a lot of times they're enough when you have a group of people that you run with. It makes it so much easier to get out the door, and they're the people that motivate you when nothing seems to be going great, or you just aren't in love with running at the time. So that's kind of what kept me coming back at first. But after my first race, I ran a 5K. I think my time was like 20 minutes and 50 seconds. I decided then that I wanted to be better than that the following week. And I was. And so on and so forth. Just kind of fell in love with that feeling of not necessarily comparing myself to others, but comparing myself to the version of myself that I was the week before. And that's I've kind of kept that with me through today. That's kind of what motivates me intrinsically for sure. Just like getting the absolute most out of myself and making sure that everything that I'm doing leads to me being a better version of myself. So, um, ended up uh, being a decent high school cross country and track athlete, and yeah, ended up at Grand Valley. So, yeah, I mean, I just can't stress that enough, is just finding a good group of people to run with. And obviously, I was given that group of people in a cross country team, but I think people who find running later in life, there are so many opportunities um, to find groups to run with as well, and that makes it so much fun at first, and then again, you just fall in love with getting the most out of yourself. So.
So what made you choose GVSU, and what was your experience like there?
Yeah, so after high school, well, actually, while I was still in high school, it took a lot of visits, and I actually was originally committed to Temple University in Philadelphia. There was actually my eventually assistant coach at Grand Valley, Aaron Watson, was at Temple at the time, and I had committed, and they ended up cutting the track program while I was actually out at Nike Cross Nationals in Portland. And so I remember finishing up my pre-meet that day, and there was an ESPN ticker at the bottom of the screen that said Temple cuts so many programs, as I think it was like baseball, track and field, and all that. So that was pretty depressing. But I think ultimately that was kind of God's way of pointing me in the right direction. I kind of at the time had this D1 or nothing mentality. But I loved Grand Valley. Like, I visited Grand Valley, and it was probably my favorite place that I visited. But I was so hung up on being a Division I athlete that I think that got the best of me early on. And that kind of just awoke in me, or woke me up to the fact that, you can be a great athlete anywhere. And that was, I think, God's way of nudging me to Grand Rapids and to Grand Valley. But yeah, 5 great years in Grand Rapids. Wouldn't trade it for anything. I went to school and never came back. My parents probably don't like that, but I just loved the city, loved staying there and running again with the people that were on the team over the summers, and continuing to get the most out of myself. And probably the most proud thing that I have ever done as a runner, I accomplished at Grand Valley with my teammates. We won Grand Valley's first men's cross country title, and that was 5 years in the making. Is my senior year, so it's just like a icing on the cake of a great 5 years at school. So
Were you personally runner-up that year too?
yeah. So I was runner up. Our girls won too, and we had the female individual winner. So I should have leaned a little bit more, just tried a little harder to make sure that we got the individuals on both sides and the team. But yeah, that was such a cool day for just the whole program.
Yeah. And then I'm sure you, as the leader of the team too, that feels really good when you can come together and work together to accomplish not only a great individual goal of like podiuming, but then also as a team to win. That has to have felt really cool.
Yeah, it was awesome. And we'd been knocking on the door. My of my 5 years at Grand Valley, I think we finished second 3 of them. And so to finally sort of bust through the door and knock it down and come out on top, that was really special for all of us, and just everyone in the program that had been in the program previously. I feel like it was a culmination of so many people doing so many things that we were finally able to do something like that. And so that's really special when you have a family that's not only the people at school currently, but people from prior years that had really helped push things along as well. So
That's so cool. And as you talk about people and community and team, but then also striving for that excellence for yourself, what made you choose to stay in Michigan? I think most professionals are like, Michigan isn't the ideal conditions, but what persuaded you to stay in Michigan and train?
I would say the biggest thing is I was looking again. I approached it sort of like I would have coming out of high school and heading into college, visiting different groups um, and everything like that. The Hansons have been around for a really long time, and that's something that doesn't really happen with a lot of professional groups. It seems like you know they burn real bright for 5, maybe 6 years, and then things kind of fall apart or it becomes something different. The Hansons have been able to kind of make a program that has lasted, you know, it's what is it now? I think it's over 20 years, which is just unheard of, I think, in the professional realm. And so that was a big thing for me is just knowing that this was going to be here for the foreseeable future, and knowing that the opportunity was going to be there. But I looked at places at altitude, and I don't know. I've had success at sea level, and so I guess the if it ain't broke, don't fix it adage came to mind. And again, I knew that my direction was going to be the marathon. When it was all said and done, I came out as of college, came out of college as a 5K, 10K guy. But I knew my strength would lie in the longer events. And the Hansons have proven that they know how to coach marathoners. And so that was the biggest thing, was that I wanted to gear up to make sure that I had the best opportunity I could as a marathoner.
Yeah, I love to hear that. And there's so many great runners that are produced from Michigan. And I love to hear you talk about your experience and your decision making because, it is a difficult place sometimes to train, but I think that can make us better as runners. So I know that there's listeners from all over the world listening right now, but Michigan is a great place for that, overcoming some of the adversities, being able to run the effort that you need to run for the day, knowing that the conditions might not be ideal. And we'll get to not ideal conditions when we talk about the World Championship here in a moment. But I do want to talk about on the track this year, your Night of the 10Ks track race, because that was a phenomenal run. And that was your PR too that you ran, right?
Yeah, it was. It was such a cool event. First and foremost, it was yeah, just unbelievable. I mean, the whole track was lined with people inside and outside the track. Most of it was you basically had 3 lanes to work with, and everything else was just people being crazy. Lots of beer and lots of fun. So that made it easy to kind of almost turn the brain off a little bit and kind of enjoy that atmosphere. Um, and so, yeah, I mean, such a cool experience. I would do that every year if I could. But yeah, lucky enough to finally break 28. That was a big goal of my year this year, was to do that, and I was able to do that there, and then kind of take a deep breath and gear up for the World Championships. So.
Well, it's a perfect segue into the World Championships. Tell us about your thought process, knowing that it was going to be likely hot and humid, and your strategy before the race. And then we'll talk about your in-race decisions. So what was your thought process leading into the World Marathon Championships?
Yeah, so it definitely was unseasonably warm. Like when we sat down to figure out paces and everything, that's kind of how we train is very pace specific. And so training wise, nothing was really affected. We trained like we would have, with a goal pace in mind. But then as we got closer, we definitely realized that it was going to be a pretty hot day. And so really that adjustment came once we were there. We knew it was going to be hot. I guess we didn't know how hot it was going to be, because sometimes the mornings are kind of nice, and then it gets hot throughout the day. But yeah, it started at about 70 degrees, maybe a little over. And so we just knew that we would have to be patient early. And so our original goal pace was about 4:53 for the mile, and that is all K's there. But so we kind of adjusted that to really kind of a feel it out type thing. And yeah, I at first the I was a little bit upset by all of that. I obviously wanted to be able to run fast and continue again, getting the absolute most out of myself. But I think it was a great way to prepare for February, potentially at the trials, where at least as of right now, the gun's going to go off at noon, and it's going to be a hot war of attrition. And so, really viewed it as an opportunity to practice that and see what my body could handle. And I think on the day, I got the most out of myself. But yeah, I was just kind of let the group go at about 5K. There was a big group that sort of surged into a bottle station, and I kind of let that go and was patient for sure the first half, and then was able to slowly pick people off over the latter stages of the race. So it was a lot of fun. I mean, it hurt. It was definitely one that took a little bit longer to recover from as well, I think, because of the heat. But yeah, really enjoyed it. And I think we played it perfectly for what my body was capable of that day. So
And that's really hard to do in the marathon, because you could have, Zach, at 5K, it would be no problem for you to surge and catch up, but then fade. You could have made, like, it could have been tempting to stay attached, even though you knew that you needed to have patience. So how was that for you? Because you had talked about already kind of having the plan to be patient, but was it difficult for you to let the connection go early on like that?
I think it definitely was, but it wasn't at the same time. Like I obviously I want to be like leading a world championship marathon. Like that would be so cool. And like I have goals to eventually try to do that maybe. But as of right now, like that's not something that, especially in the heat, I was capable of. It was definitely hard watching them kind of run what my original goal marathon pace was for this one, knowing that on a perfect day, maybe I could hold that. But it was fairly easy to let it go, knowing that a good chunk of the crew I knew would come back to me. And obviously, that's not when the race begins. It's going to start on that last lap, or the last quarter of the race is when it really starts to hurt. And so I think I judged it fairly well, and yeah, I was happy with it. So
Yeah, they say in marathoning, it's like know thyself. And I think I'm hearing you say that that is the case, especially with those conditions. You really have to know yourself and know what you're going to be able to give, and then also know, with experience and also having great coaches, to say that the race really happens later on. And that's what it really got exciting for those of us who were tracking your progress throughout the race. It was really fun to hear how you were moving up throughout. So you were in 40th position at 53 minutes in. 40th.
mhm.
And you were picking people off throughout then. So can you talk me through that, like, hour mark to the ending stages, like 40K? Because that's when I got my next update.
Yeah, it was just a slow process of there were a couple guys. I think there was a French guy that I ended up finishing somewhere in the top 10. I think like seventh or eighth, who was kind of where I was for a while. And I remember kind of working together with him during that third lap. It was a 4 loop course. And so it was just eyes up on the next guy, really. I was still making sure that that third lap I was kind of staying within myself, because I think it can be easy to kind of, we're over halfway, like let's kind of go. But even there, you have to be at least a little bit patient with everything. Is that last lap is when things can really fall apart for you. And that's when I got most of my bodies that I ended up catching was that last loop. You know, people, I would, it just seemed like there's no way I'm going to catch these guys. And then all of a sudden things just shut down. The monkey jumps on the back and all of a sudden I'm there. It gave me a lot of belief in what just my ability to judge my own body and my own, what I can give. And again, made me super confident and excited about the trials in February, about just, again, being able to withstand the heat and be really smart with it, knowing that that monkey can jump on your back in the later stages of the race and everything can really fall apart for you.
Were there like moves that you made, or was it pretty much a gradual catching of all of these people? What did that look like?
It was fairly steady throughout. I was not quite even split, but closer than a lot of people were. And so it kind of felt like I was picking things up a little bit. And I think during the third loop, the third 10K loop, my K splits were just a little bit quicker. But then I started to fade a little bit as well. So I think I timed it really, really well. Because I think if it was any longer or got any hotter, the wheels could have fallen off a little bit more. But yeah, it was well judged.
Did you partake? I know this is kind of a silly question, but all of us are wondering because we don't see this in everyday races. Did you partake in any of like the sponges or the ice and things like that? And if so, what did you do with it?
Yeah, I had a hat on. And so I would try to put the ice in my hat as best I could. That was kind of difficult because the ice stations were right next to your bottle station, and you only have two hands. And so grabbing that and then trying to hold your bottle and take off your hat and put it was just really hard. So eventually I kind of ditched that and just grabbed the sponges. And those were super beneficial. I almost felt like a boost out of every sponge station. Just that cool, refreshing feeling. Even if it lasted 400 meters, it was enough to kind of recharge and just calm yourself down a little bit. Because yeah, that last lap I remember vividly with about 5K to go, grabbing a sponge and dousing myself with some cold water and just almost like waking waking up a little bit, and feeling like, okay, maybe I can do this, because there are definitely some dark moments in every marathon, but in the heat like that, it was a few more than normal, I think.
Was this your most hot and humid marathon that you've done?
I ran Chicago in 2021, which wasn't quite as hot, but it was definitely a pretty hot one. And luckily, again, there I had teammates to run with for the majority of the race that made staying within myself even easier to do because you had a group of guys doing it as well. So
Yeah,
I think the Hansons, I think the Hansons just do a great job, really hammering that home with all of us athletes, just to trust what you're doing, and know that if you're running the marathon the way that we want to run it, people are going to come back to you during the second half. And while it's difficult to say goodbye for the first half, and you don't get as much screen time, maybe, it's going to be more beneficial for you in the long run to hold on to that and let it rip the second half in the later stages.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what makes it even possible. And talking about the momentum you were gaining when you were catching people, you said that that gave you belief and that helped you as you were going through your own difficulties with this really hard, humid day, and you were catching people. That strategy, is this something that you employ everywhere, or is this like specifically your marathon strategy?
I would say it's pretty specific to the marathon. I think like we do train for certain things in some races, but the marathon more than anything. And it's I really view it as a race against yourself more than anything. Like ultimately, all you're going to be able to do is get the absolute most out of yourself. Like I kind of talked about at the beginning, which is again why I really love the marathon, because it's just you against the clock ultimately. And so, I in a lot of other races, there's a lot more competing and moves being made. But personally, at least for me, at the stage where I'm at in the marathon, I think it's just all about getting faster and being able to get the most out of my body. I'm not going to be a guy who's going to put a surge in because I think that's going to cause detriment to me later on in the race, because I'm not someone who can pick things up and slow them down and pick things up. It just shoots my legs. And so at least in the marathon for sure, we employ that strategy. And other races, like a cross country race, I'm probably going to want to be out with the leaders no matter what they're kind of doing. And road races that aren't the marathon, same thing. Maybe not the half marathon necessarily, but those shorter races for sure. Like I'm just gonna, whatever the race is doing, I'm gonna do, because there's not that second half that grabs people and pulls them back to you. So
That makes a lot of sense. And I'd like to talk to you more about that in an upcoming episode, if you wouldn't mind. I do want to go back to your finish, though, because we didn't quite get to that. Because at 40K, you were at 18th position and you ended up in 13th place. What was that final bit like for you as you were like getting towards the finish line, still gobbling people up?
yeah, it was definitely, it was like carnage, first of all. Like there was just people just struggling, and I was struggling. Everyone was just struggling to get to the line. And the course was set up, it's basically this 3K straightaway to the roundabout where you finish. And I just remember thinking like how much, like every step is a little bit closer, and like there's a guy right there. That's really what I was focusing on, was just getting as many people as I could. I knew I was somewhere in the teens, and one of my goals was to be top 10. And so just missed on that. But I just trying to get across the line and grab as many of those people in front of me as I could. So
Well, congratulations on the 13th place. That's phenomenal. And representing Team USA made us all proud. It was so fun to watch.
yeah, thank you. And thanks for watching. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. So our listeners, they're wondering, like, you gave us a lot of translatable like advice and your thoughts through this that are super beneficial. But if you were to sum up like marathon moves or marathon strategy, what would you tell our listeners?
Patience. More than anything, patience. I think even in training, like it's really cool to have some awesome workouts along the way in a build, but if you just string together base hits, to use a baseball reference, you're going to score runs doing that. And so I think just continue stringing together those decent days, and that turns into a big day. Even if it's not at a particular marathon, if it's the next one, or just year after year, month after month of solid days, it'll take you really far, and you can surprise yourself, I think, with that patience.
Thanks, Zach. Thanks for joining us. And we look forward to keeping our audience updated. We've been talking about you on the show as your races come up, but we're really looking forward to Orlando, and we'll be rooting you on.
Yeah, thank you. And we'll see you there.
See you there.
Zach, thanks again for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts and experiences. And congrats on, as well, a top 10 finish in the 5K championship, road championship for the U.S. In the U.S. Road Championship this past weekend. So nice work there as well.
As you mentioned, he has quite the range, and we're going to talk about that more in an upcoming episode with Zach. And I did want to say that we're excited to see Zach at the Olympic Trials Marathon in February. So good luck to you, Zach, and we'll talk to you soon.
Let's get on to the world of running. First, a shout out to A to Z runners who are doing the thing and doing it well at that. Congrats to those finishing the New York City Marathon. Vegas ran a 27-minute PR.
Woo, wow.
Roughly.
That's
personal
huge.
best. Nice work, Vegas.
Go, Vegas.
Bill, a very strong race. He, despite not necessarily going out and thinking he was going to try to run fast relative to other performances, and yet his last 4 miles were blazing and negative split on the New York City course, which is crazy. Chelsea also running on a tough day and a tough course.
This is her first marathon postpartum. She's had quite the year. Yeah, it's been a strong year.
Nice work. In the Marshall Marathon, Craig ran a very strong effort. Nice work, Craig. And Mary was second overall at the Stony Creek Half. And in the hot cider events, Lorenda ran like a 9-minute PR.
Yeah.
Michaela ran a half marathon PR
and
as
placed
well.
in her age group, too.
Placed in her age group. And Doug, in the 10K, tied his 10K PR, I believe, to the second. So,
whoa.
Well done all around. Lots of great racing and running. And as we always say, it doesn't have to be like winning a race or running a PR to be a great day. And people are going out and doing the thing, being tough, and it's wonderful to see.
So first on the docket for the world of running is the 50K World Championships. I just wanted to briefly touch on it and give a little shout out to one of our previous podcast guests, Andrea Pomeranski of the USA. She earned a silver medal, and this is only her second 50K. She won the USATF 50K championship title earlier this year. And then now in her second 50K, she gets a silver medal at Worlds. So very impressive. Winning the race was Carla Mellarino from the UK. She won in a time of 3:18:23. I guess it was a really difficult course and not great weather. So congratulations to all of the runners running this 50K. And then for the men, this is also quite the story. Spain swept top 3 spots.
That it just means they're tougher than everybody else in the world.
Is that what it means?
Must be.
I mean, that's impressive.
That is.
And then New York City Marathon. Zach, do you want to start us with the men's race?
So in NYC, there's always this debate. I don't know why it's a debate because we're going to prove why it shouldn't be here in a moment. But what's the hardest World Marathon Majors race? And is it Boston or is it New York? It's basically one of those two because all the other ones are really fast. But that's always the question. Well, we're going to settle that debate here in a moment. But oddly enough, despite the fact that New York is a known challenging course, Tamarat Tola of Ethiopia felt like he should just do what he would do on any course, which is run super fast and win the race by a lot. So that's the story here.
Seems like a good plan, I guess.
Tola, recently a world champion in the marathon, set a new New York City Marathon course record running 2:04:58. Under 2:05, the first time anyone's ever done that in New York. And when you're talking about things like the world record is under 2:01 and no one's run under 2:05 in New York, that gives you an idea of how difficult the course is. Well, why is this course record so big? There's a number of reasons. First, it's 12 years old, so it's been a while. In the era of super shoes, still the record has not been touched or even come close, really. He only broke the previous record by a slim margin at that. So it tells you what that 2011 course record was like. But also, only 3 men have run under 206 on this course ever. So that's crazy. And then, not only that, only 7 men have run under 208 on this course. Remember, the world record right now is under 201, and yet 7 people ever have run under 208. 3 of them were in this race. So prior to this race, only 4 men had run under 208 on this course. That gives you an idea of how challenging it is. So anyone who went out and ran the New York Marathon, props to many. It was 51,000 finishers, but also some of the people we knew going out and running it. Yeah, you're taking on the big dog, and it's not an easy one. So let's note as well, this was the largest margin of victory from Tola, largest margin of victory at the New York Marathon in 23 years. He won by almost 2 minutes, 2 full minutes over second place.
That
Albert
is
Career.
huge.
Yeah, huge. Career of Kenya, no stranger to running on difficult courses and running well. And even so, on a challenging course like this, Career ran a minute PR just about to finish second in 206.57.
Wow.
And then Shura Kitata of Ethiopia finished third in just a little over 207, which is, as I noted, 3 of the 7 people ever to run under 208, and those guys were doing the good work. And then after Kitata, it was 3 minutes to the 4th place finisher. That just gives you a sense of how tough those 3 were going, and Tola just way out in front like that. What a way to do it. So there you go. The men's race was crazy and fast.
And you said 3 of the top were, the top 3 were...
The top 3
were in the top
3 of the
fastest
7 fastest
times on the course ever.
Yes, I said that. Yep.
Wow. What a big day for the men.
Not so much for the women, at least as far as
the women's race was more
fast.
conservative, and race tactics came into play a little bit more. We had some big names in the women's race as well, and whenever you have a lot of contenders, they kind of gauge off each other, and it's more of a race rather than let's go see how fast we can run, right? Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it depends. I mean, because usually someone in the race wants to just run as fast as possible, but not this time.
Not this time. No.
Nobody wanted to run fast. Everyone wanted to just wait.
But it's
And
the
wait.
course too, and they know that. Like part of
wait.
it is that this course is very difficult. So,
As a matter of fact, they didn't really start picking it up until mile 22.
oh wow.
So they weren't just waiting because it's a difficult course. They were waiting because no one wanted to do anything except try to win the race as late as possible, which I love for a marathon strategy. That's my favorite way to do it. Try to win the race as late as possible. That's my vision of a good marathon race.
So it was surprising that it took so long for it to pick up. 22 miles is a long time to wait. But Helen Obiri showed her stuff by winning the race. Helen Obiri, she has not run that many marathons. Is this her third?
This is her third, yep.
Okay.
Her
third
first was
marathon.
New York last year when she
Wow.
was 6th.
Okay. That's amazing.
And she hasn't lost one since.
2 marathon majors under her belt. And she won over Lentezabet Gide of Ethiopia. And you've heard us say her name on repeat because she's winning things quite frequently. And Bridget Kosgei of Kenya.
Previous world record holder. 3rd fastest marathon time ever.
So these are really big names. And over defending NYC champ Sharon Lokedi. Is that how you say it?
Lokedi.
So these are really strong runners that Helen Obiri won over. And it's very early in her marathoning career. So that's thrilling.
Not all that surprising, though. One, because she won Boston, clearly she shows she can win on tough courses, because Boston is the other difficult course, which is saying something. There are a lot of marathoners out there that can run blazing fast, but cannot do it on the tough courses.
But she's a cross-country runner, right? Hasn't she
now
won cross-country?
Yep, here's the important point. So not only is she the first woman to win both Boston and New York in the same year since 1989, 34 years since anyone
That's
else
a
has
nice
done
stat.
that. Yes, it is. She also is the only woman ever, still to this day, to win global titles in all 3 of the cross-country championship, indoor track championship, outdoor track championship.
Wow.
So Helen Obiri can do all the things at the very highest level. It should not surprise anyone that she can also do it in the marathon.
Now she just needs a world marathon title or an Olympic Gold.
If she pulled off a global title in the marathon, she would enter into yet another status of no one else has ever done all of this. Now, so we say that, but there are other legends in the grand scheme of things that it's interesting to, the question of who's the best marathoner right now in the world. It's like, okay, well, you had that world record from Tigist Sefa, but she has not necessarily beat all the legendary people. She ran that super fast time, and she's got another fast time too. But so she runs fast times. Does that mean she wins championship races?
Or tactical races?
None yet, but we don't know. We'll see. However, you have to contend with the likes of Sifan Hassan right now, and she wins races and
tough.
Runs fast times. Sifan Hassan has run the first or second fastest time in the 5,000, 10,000, indoor mile. Trying to see if I can get all of them right. Marathon in the last few years. All of those events in the last few years, she has run first or second fastest time in history, right? That's crazy.
And she can endure so much discomfort.
Nobody can hurt like Sifan Hassan. So we're saying that simply because the conversation right now is, well, who's the best marathoner in the world at the moment? And Hellen Obiri just won the 2 hardest courses in 1 year, which is crazy. Sifan Hassan also won 2 majors this year. Do not forget, she won London and Chicago, and in between them ran 3 track finals in the World Championships track and field in the middle of all that. So, I mean, is Obiri or Hassan, you can't have that kind of conversation until they race each other. But the point is, we're talking about legendary runners, and we're living in this time right
That's
now.
what I was going to say. These are exciting times. That's what we have to say about it.
Yep. By the way, Sharon Lokedi was 3rd. That's her second podium finish in New York in 2 years. She won last year, finished 3rd this year. That's always impressive. So, the question, what's the toughest course? And beyond all doubt, it should not
According
be a
to
debate.
Zach.
No. Look at the numbers. Look at the situation. Beyond all doubt, New York City is the hardest World Marathon Majors marathon. And here's how you know this for sure. 1, everyone who does both of them says that. So that should tell you something. Okay, so everybody says that New York's harder. 2, the women's course record in New York is 2.5 minutes slower than the next slowest, which is Boston. The men's course record in New York, which was just broken, the women's course record is 20 years old, by the way. Has not been broken since 2003. That's crazy. We're talking about the likes of Paula Radcliffe, never broke that record. The likes of all these legends in the last 20 years, no one's touched it. So that's a hard course. And on the men's side, it's 2 minutes slower, and it was even just recently broken. Still 2 minutes slower than Boston's course record. So, yeah, New York is harder. It just, it is. Stop trying to debate it. No, I'm kidding, but I'm not trying to shut down the debate. I'm just simply saying it is over. All right. So, that being the case, we also had some other great racing in New York over the weekend.
Also in New York, we had the USATF 5K championships. For the men's race and the women's race, we had brand new USATF winners.
Yeah.
Which is fun to see. Zach, you want to take us through the men's race?
So, quick notes. First, Morgan Beadlescombe wins the race. Michigan State graduate, multiple time runner-up in the NCAA. Just graduated a year ago, and it's been interesting. He's been like a presence in so many different things in the last year that it almost kind of feels like, well, why? Of course he won a race because he does things like that. Well, no, he actually doesn't. This is his first title, but many people saw him win that race and thought, oh, that just seems natural for him to win. Well, because it should. He's one of those who you're going to likely see more and more of them. That being the case, Beadlescombe wins the race. Very strong finish to do so. Ahmed Muhammad was second, a few seconds behind him for NAZ Elite. And then it was Ty Dinger, who, again, another name that you just would not see on a podium list very often. And so just really having a strong day, finishes 3rd.
Yeah. I mean, these guys are beating like Woody Kincaid.
Oh, yeah. Legendary runners.
This it was a great race.
And shout out to Willie Fink, who was one of my pacers in Baltimore, who was, stepping off of his very high tier to pace the likes of me in a marathon. So that's something. But Willie Fink, top 10 finish. And that's always fun to see, great work coming
Something
off of.
dramatic happened in this race, though, and you watched the clip of it, so I want
So
you to talk about it.
The thing that everyone's talking about is not how the race went. The thing is how nearly everyone died, almost literally, because a bus stormed onto the course, almost plowed right through the entire pack of men's runners, and nearly hit two of the lead motorcycles.
It's absolutely terrifying.
So Morgan Beadlescombe was asked about this after the race in an interview, and his comment, I think, just sums it all up. The first thing is they're like, what do you think about that bus thing? And he's like, I don't know. It's New York City. Does that stuff just happen? He's a Michigan guy coming in and he says, New York City, that's normal, right? Well, his follow-up to that, which is the important point here, is yeah, but at the same time, someone needs to be held accountable for that because people could have died. They almost did. People almost died.
Yeah.
And so that's not okay. That should never be okay. How the bus did not know the race was happening is largely due to whoever was supposed to be blocking off streets didn't do the right job. So that was scary. But no one was hurt in the filming of this crazy incident. And yet whoever was driving the lead motorcycle, mad props to that dude's reaction because that bus would have hit him if he didn't do a last minute super dodge and didn't fall somehow, stayed upright on the motorcycle. And if you're familiar with motorcycles, when you're not riding fast, because they're not moving super fast, and really sharp turns and dodges don't end well for motorcycles. I actually watched a guy fall on his motorcycle just a couple days ago.
Oh, no.
He was not going fast, but he had to stop really suddenly and turn really quickly, and he fell off. Well, that, yes, almost was bad. But everyone's okay.
Let's move on to the women's race. Kira D'Amato took it out. At 1 mile, she had broken away from the pack, but there wasn't a lot of separation. There was definitely enough of a touch point that Wayne Kaladi and Annie Rodenfels were able to catch right back up with her. Wayne Kaladi is a two-time defending champ in this event. And then D'Amato and Kaladi faded to 4th and 5th. Well, Annie Rodenfels kept going strong, and she ended up winning the race and took the victory. This is her very first U.S. title, but she is no stranger to fast running, of course. And for second place, we had Rachel Smith, who finished second in 15:26, and it was only 6 months ago she gave birth.
Right on.
That's an awesome turnaround. So fantastic for Rachel.
Hopefully it's a healthy and safe turnaround. That's quick.
Well, it's just the lack of sleep. Me, personally as a mother, I think 6 months in, you're in the thick of it. So really impressive to be able to perform at this level and achieve her second place finish in that fast time. 15:26 is a great time. And then Betsy Hotz for third. She's Rodenfels' teammate. So pretty cool that they had a 1 and 3 finish there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, as it were, this now marks the conclusion of the USA Track and Field road running circuit. They have finished. How many events were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 events on the circuit. You can see that it's quite extensive. Includes cross country and a half marathon, among then everything from a mile up to 25K with the various distances. And so in all of that, we had shared with you a standings update some weeks ago as they were nearing the end of it. Now we have the conclusion, and it's always interesting to just kind of see how that ends up for people. On the men's side, no surprises. Leonard Career on top of the standings. He was going to be on top of the standings unless something crazy happened. And since no top 10 people ran this last race, there weren't going to be any changes after the 10K championships, which was when we checked in with you. So Leonard Career wins the whole thing. He gets the prize. He gets the prize purse. That's always exciting. Clayton Young in his triple win season ends up second. Just what a great road season for Clayton Young.
Yeah.
Capped
Previous
it all
podcast
off.
guest, by the way.
Capped it all off, by the way, as well. After his most recent road championship, then he ran the Chicago Marathon and ran an Olympic standard time as well, which is just crazy and awesome. So Clayton Young just doing it all this year. And then it was Jacob Thompson in third, as was likely going to be the case to round out the podium for the men. On the women's side, No surprises for the victory. Edna Kurgat had all the points and continued and held those through the end. But there was a switch up in second and third, and this just goes to show that every point counts in these types of things because you know there's prize bonuses for the standings here, and it was Emma Grace Hurley who ended up taking the second place spot by the way she ended up doing this because she was in third prior to this 5K. She ran the 5K, which not a lot of people did in the top standings. And she finished 9th, 10th. I can't remember how many places they pay back. It's something like that. So she finished, barely in the top 10 or right around top 10, right? But it was just enough because it gave her 2 points. And she was down 1 point behind Nell Rojas in the standings. So now she ends 1 point ahead of Nell Rojas to take second place. Just enough to squeak by.
Yep, just enough.
That's crazy.
And I don't I know I mentioned this too much, but I look at all these prize money totals and I think we can do better. Track and field and road racing, running in general, we could do better with prize money for these professional runners. It's very small compared to other sports.
Well, it just simply comes back to the fact that unless people at large, not runners, because runners already do, but the rest of the people care about the sport, it's never going to change. So how can we get people to see that running is really interesting?
I've been thinking about that for a while now.
The answer is it's not likely going to happen, but it's always worth pursuing.
I think that there are more avenues and more sponsors, like we've mentioned before, how Japan has corporate sponsors.
Yeah, but it's not about the sponsors. It's about the community, society caring about the event. They just don't. Americans don't care about running
Which
sports.
was interesting. This was not on our list to talk about, but apparently people are pretty happy with Galen Rupp's announcing, which is part of the public becoming more aware and enjoying watching the sport more, is having good commentary on the race as it unfolds.
There is a question. Would the public at large know the difference between Galen Rupp's commentary and anyone else's? Runners loved it because, we just know, like, race commentary is usually people who don't really know a ton about what's happening. But they might be good commentators. Commentators. They might be good commentators, and I don't ever, don't ever want to say otherwise. But if they aren't involved heavily in the sport, they may not necessarily have as keen an awareness of what's going on there. Galen Rupp, the best American distance runner, in the last 20 years, he does. He has very keen, and so. Not only that, but he happens to be a good commentator as well, which was kind of news to us,
right?
The running world.
Yeah.
And did a phenomenal job with the New York City Marathon.
And even people who are really critical of Galen Rupp were liking his commentating. So,
which says something.
That's great.
If you can win over the comments section of anything, you've done good. So well done, Galen. Well done. I'm glad to see it because he's one you like to see. Involved in the sport more than just going out and running the races.
So I wanted to do a bonus for the World of Running segment. The Pan Am Games, which I'm not going to go through all of it. I probably should, but we don't have time for that today. I did want to mention in the men's 10,000, U.S. got the 1 and 2 positions. So gold and silver.
At the Pan Am Games. Isai Rodriguez took the gold. And as Andy is always proud to note, Sam Chalenga, previous podcast guest, and just this epic comeback tour of all comeback tours earns a silver.
And his wife Mary is also crushing it. She just qualified for the U.S. Olympic trials in the half marathon. She ran 110 something, and this is her resurgence in the sport. It was just recently that she started really getting back into it the last couple of years. So it's fun to see that Chalenga is doing so well.
Doing so well.
Well, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for listening, and special thanks to Zach Panning for being on the show.
And remember that we want to hear your questions, and it's very easy to share them. You just email questions@AtoZrunning.com. Anytime, all the time. We'll answer some on air, and if we can't get to them on air, we'll still shoot your response as well.
Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you next week.